Welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a special guest, Brian, who I met for the first time in Tesla Takeover Europe just 2 months ago. To learn more about his story, what got him into Tesla, what he's excited about in Tesla's future, and what blind spots, as Tesla fans and investors, we should be aware of when we look into the company's future. Brian, welcome to the channel. So good having you here.
Thank you, Darren. This is very exciting. I am looking forward to this and finding out all kinds of new stuff about myself, maybe.
It's always good just to take a step back and really listen and reflect and get another perspective. So, Brian, tell us more about yourself. How did all of this begin for you?
Indeed. I have been following Tesla's story for many, many years. Before I had a channel, I was got known with my channel for counting squares and predicting production numbers. And those are things that I'd already been doing just for myself, just anyway, just because I wanted to. And I'm really good with an Excel spreadsheet. So I started tracking it, and I would suggest to other channels, guys, you should try this. You should do weekly side-by-side videos, which I did for a long time. You should try counting squares and predicting when it'll be finished. And they all said, that sounds like way too much work. So I created a channel, did it myself, and found out that's way too much work. So it is difficult. So now what I'm doing, more than that, and I'll still do those from time to time, is I travel extensively. You and I met in Austria, but
Yeah.
I've been to the UK for the Fully Charged show. I've done fully charged shows in 3 different countries, and also in Canada, also in the US. I've traveled to TeslaCon in Florida, a bunch of events in Texas. I've toured the Fremont factory. I've gotten to see a little bit of Giga Texas on the inside. And then where else did I go? Oh, I got a tour of the Ford factory.
Wow.
It's the public tour, but I did it with a retired engineer who could answer all my questions when I pointed to
Amazing.
things and said, "What's that?" So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of site visits. I'm always
Mm.
out interviewing new people and finding new things. And as a result, I get to pull the the web closer together and understand how all these things connect in
Mm.
ways that turns out to be a bit unique. So people seem to enjoy that.
That is really amazing. And I love how you're building the spreadsheets, you're understanding numbers, but equally, you're visiting the sites to understand and talking to retired engineers to understand the story behind the numbers.
Yes, and when I don't know an answer, because I'm pretty good at finding the answers. If I don't know an answer, I've got experts I can call. I had someone ask me at an event recently, "How do you know all these weird little things?" And I
Yeah.
said, "Because what I'm really doing is collecting experts." And
Yeah.
I find people in a variety of studies and a variety of fields, and they, I speculated that maybe the Cybertruck is 5 seats instead of 6 because the airbag can't get around the large screen. Called up the retired airbag engineer that I know, and Ken told me, "Nope, that's not it. We could absolutely get over and around that. That's not the reason." So
Mm.
it's just because it's too narrow, I guess, for at least us big fat Americans.
Bring it to Asia. The point that you surround yourself with experts and having the mindset that you don't need to know all the answers because we can't. Like you may know everything about a factory in Fremont or Texas, but when it comes to Shanghai, there will definitely be someone who knows it a bit more. And I guess that's why
Always.
we do this. Build a community around the world. Everyone has unique gifts. When you talk to all these engineers, visit all these factories, Ford or Tesla or anyone else, what excites you most about Tesla in the next 12 months?
Well, in the next 12 months is tough to say because we don't know the whole roadmap. So let's start back a little bit. Since I've been watching this so obsessively, uh, I had the foresight when the stock dipped in May of 2019. That's when I bought the majority of my shares. I have about 1,000 shares that I bought for about $13 each. So when people see
Wow.
a big red day, they go, "Are you freaking out?" And I say, "No, no, it can fall 95% and I'll still break even. I'll do okay. Probably 90%, but it is um I saw something in Tesla back then that others did not see. And when they say to me things like, I bet you wish you sold when it was over 400, I say no, because if I sold at 400, if I was that kind of person, that'd make me the kind of person who would have sold at 200 or 100
Mm,
or 50. I would have missed the majority of the growth. So when and also I say to them, I saw something in 2019 that you didn't. I still see it today. Now, I don't give
mm,
investing advice, not even to my friends and family. But when I bought it in 2019, I was very excited. I told a friend, and he said, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. To which I'm thinking, I'm not sure you can afford a 10-foot pole anymore. So maybe you should have. So what has excited me over the past few years was the factory growth. You could see it. You could see here's the it was production constrained. The more we can produce, the more we will absolutely sell. Well, we finally satisfied that demand in part by making Model Y, the best selling car in the world, in 4 different factories across 3 continents. That's a
mm,
lot of capacity. I think we might have maxed out on that. When you're at number one, there's only so much headroom left to grow. But
mm,
over the next 12 months, what's exciting? Well, the next things. The fact that we've seen the factory build the construction of new factories slowing down tells me there's something going on that we don't see. And that something is probably autonomy. It's probably the bot. It's probably Dojo. It's
mm,
probably all those things. And there are so many decisions Tesla made that were the wrong ones. And you could say, well, not making the compact right now is a wrong decision. Yeah, it
mm,
does look that way. But so was moving from building glider cars like the original Roadster to making your own mass-produced cars. That's the wrong decision. No company in 50 years had done that in America and survived. Uh, but building your own battery factory in the desert, that's got to be a mistake. Just buy them. Just buy the cells and you'll have them. But it of course, was critical to their growth plan. A lot of things that they've done look absolutely bonkers until you see how it works out. The Cybertruck, no one's going to buy that. Yeah, people are going to buy it as quickly as they can. As many as they can build, they are selling them. And when the price drops from the current 100,000 minimum to
yeah.
a 80,000 minimum, it's going to qualify for the federal tax incentive. And now it's gone from 100 to 72,500. The market at that price point becomes vast. And we'll see how that goes. So over the next 12 months, what am I excited about? The big event on August 8th. We
Mm,
will find things out. And I've had skeptics say to me, well, what would it take to disappoint you at that event? And I say, I don't know what the event is. It's just, I don't know. Are they showing me a car? Are they showing me an app? Are they showing me a philosophy? I don't
yeah.
know, but we will find out. And that is what I'm excited about.
Do you feel that there's a risk when it's framed as a robotaxi event? There's a risk that especially institutional investors may think, okay, they're going to show us an actual product. Otherwise, this is just more promises. How do you connect in the vision and what ends up being on the roads of coming to reality?
So what we see in vision, it depends how early in the vision we're talking. When we saw the first ideas behind boring tunnels, they were
Yeah.
very different than what we ended up getting. Not they were more fun. I don't think we need to have that fun vision for it to work. They are building the boring tunnel in Vegas, and it is at a budget that would blow your mind because
Mm,
it's going to cost the city when it's finished approximately nothing. It will be a revenue generator, not a revenue
amazing.
loss. So it is, um, but it's not going to look like it was originally meant to look. We still don't know what vehicle they're going to use for mass transporting people because what they're using now are just cars. We need like a
Mhm,
little shuttle bus or something for sure. So what I am hoping to see is a compact car in 2 versions, one with a
mm,
steering wheel and one without. I'd like it to be the compact that is also a robotaxi, just on the same platform. And if you got time, are you going to build more stuff on the same platform? Show us that too. Do you have a little shuttle bus that's on the same platform? Because you could. With the same gigacastings and structural battery pack, you absolutely could. Just look at how many things Tesla did for the first time that have since that were it's just like when Apple got rid of the headphone jack. They made fun of
Yeah.
it and then they immediately copied it. And the same with getting rid of the charger plug that came in the box. What a ridiculous idea. We have done the same thing now too. The the batteries in the floorboard was a Tesla innovation. No one had done that before them. The
Mm.
structural battery pack was a Tesla first. The gigacastings was a Tesla first. Sandy
Mhm.
Munro and others in his industry had been pushing that for years, saying, look, it's going to save money in the long term, even though you have to buy this outrageously expensive machine up front. They said, nope, nope, we're just going to keep doing what we do and just get a couple more pennies instead of looking at the future. And a lot of things Tesla does that. When they said we're going towards autonomy, people laughed and then copied. When they said we're going to build robots, people laughed. Now there are 150 credible robot development companies out there trying to build their version because it all just makes sense if you look at it through the right lens. There was a convergence of technology that meant now could be the time for robots.
Mm.
And if Tesla's right about robots, they've got a unique ability to ramp manufacturing quickly to capitalize on it as soon as they've got what they consider a minimum viable product.
That's
And
right.
as far as I'm concerned, they could be there today. They just don't want to be. They have a higher standard for minimum viable product than I do. But when that time comes, they can just put one in every showroom whose only job it is to offer you a cup of water and get it for you and give it to you, and then go back to polishing the fingerprints off the Cybertruck. Because my goodness, if it can do that, it can do anything. So they've got they are positioned uniquely to take advantage of this. They've got the best training data. And if you look at
Mhm.
things like the bot demo, they said, yeah, we wanted to build something that we could actually mass produce as cheap and light and safe and all that. So we
Yeah.
used our in house designed crash test modeling software to model it falling over or getting bonked into. And you go, of course you did. Of course you did. Meanwhile, the other guys are just overbuilding it and saying that's good enough. It's good enough. But they're not using all the advantages they have. So, yeah, I hope that answers it.
Thus, there is so much to look forward to for Tesla. 88, as Elon Musk mentioned, is time because of how 8 signifies prosperity to in Chinese culture matters a lot. So much good. What are the blind spots we should be aware of? Because we're so in Tesla, it's important to remember to step back and ask critically, what should we be thinking more critically about? What's that in your
What
mind?
what are our blind spots regarding Tesla? Well, there's always the key man risk. If something were to happen to him, that would be potentially problematic. A lot of people I've seen argue that Elon is a drag on Tesla. I don't think shareholders agree, and we know because we just put his back pay to a vote and it passed
Right.
by a huge margin. So those people who were whining saying he doesn't deserve a penny, those aren't shareholders. They don't get a vote in this contest. So key man risk is a big one. What are our blind spots? Well, a lot of the projections I see for things like Optimus, like self-driving, like autonomous semis in the future, um, I don't think fail to fully consider the impact of the competition. I think
Mm.
by the time Optimus is released as a commercial product, there will be other bots in the market doing a pretty good job. And if those get cemented into one industry first, it may be difficult for Optimus to get into them. And there are manufacturers in China who are very good at developing the same product with the same capabilities at a lower price, maybe even a much lower price. You look at something like the invention of the hoverboard and
Mm.
how within months China was mass producing them at a shocking scale. The guy who invented the hoverboard said, I'm going to buy one, open it up, and prove that they stole oh my gosh, it's completely different. This is way better. This is so much cheaper and more elegant. I can't believe
Wow.
I made it the hard way. And that's what we're seeing is China is not They had a reputation for a long time of just copying. That
Yes.
reputation began its end 20 years ago. And if you're still thinking that they're just copying and stealing, you need to get past it. It's no longer true. They're genuinely innovating. I got to meet, I heard a story. This company was making a Commodore 64 emulator that existed within this little controller. It had tons and tons of Commodore 64 games that you would just play in the controller. And they designed it, they sent it to China and said, don't change anything, just build it as is. And they get it back and it doesn't work. So they opened it and found that they had changed everything. And when they started diagnosing it, they found that there was one diode that they went a little too. You changed this one diode, and now
Yes.
you've got it. You made something 70% cheaper than what we sent you. That's what China's going to do. So I think our big blind spot is the idea that China is not going to become once again the biggest factory of the world. It still is, it always has been, but in a new way, in ways that it wasn't before, where for the longest time there were no Chinese brands people outside of China could name. The only one I would ever hear when I would ask people, because I'd lived in China doing and worked there in the early 2000s, the only one anyone could ever name outside of China was Tsingtao beer, which
Mm.
is 50% owned by Anheuser-Busch. So right there, you're half wrong. But now there are countless Chinese brands making
That's right.
really good products. The idea that, well, they'll never catch up to the Korean or Japanese or or US based cell phone skills, laughable now. And
Exactly.
we're going to see that with bots. We're going to see that with cars. We're going to see it with all the emerging tech.
We look at a company like DJI, they're basically like the SpaceX of the drone industry, the 90% of the drone market, and the US government is considering not allowing DJI drones to be sold. That's the extent to which they've completely out innovated an industry.
My question when people say that China doesn't innovate is I've got the DJI Pocket and the
Yeah.
DJI microphones. My
Mhm.
question is, who do you imagine they stole that idea from? Because I've never seen anything like the DJI Pocket before it. And their microphones are just kind of more of the same tech, but without the camera. They these are innovative. The Insta 360. In fact, now that I think about it, everything in my camera bag, which I've shown you,
Yeah.
is all Chinese, except for my
Mm.
lavalier mics, which are from Rode, but they're probably made
Mm.
in China. I don't know. I didn't check. So yes, I'd say that our biggest blind spot is underestimating the competition because this is moving very, very quickly. I talked with a chip design engineer from IBM, and
Yeah.
I asked him about IBM chips, and he said, "I can't answer that question." I said, "I
Mm.
tried." But can you tell me about Dojo? And he said, as a matter of fact, it was my job to look at it to see if it infringed on any of our intellectual property. It did not. It was a clean chip. But what I can tell you is it's not as far ahead as Tesla would have you think, because while Tesla was showing it to you, none of the competition was showing you what they had, and theirs were just as far along in development. I asked, why is it taking so long to come out to actually reach the market? At this time, it hadn't been rolled out as it has now for in-house use. And he said, nope, that's a normal amount of time. Once you build it, you have to validate it, you have to change some things, and then you've got to write all the code that makes it actually work the way you want it to. There's years of steps between where Tesla was and where it would need to be for release. And that's not unique to Tesla. That's an industry thing. So yeah, there's a lot of competition, and that's what Tesla's up against.
Great perspective. One last question. When we try to eliminate blind spots and get smart, we've got to separate signal and noise. And it's important to understand where we get signal from. So when we look at sources like Troy Test Light, we're also being known around the world for putting together forecasts for Tesla deliveries. How, what kind of principles do you personally take to say, okay, this source is a great signal and it's not noise? Walk us
Well,
through your process.
sure. Well, the first one is uh, the track record, and
Mm.
and then so with Troy's a good example. I followed him for years, And my numbers were generally better than his, quarter after quarter, year after year. And sometimes he'd be a little closer, but usually I was closer. And then about once a year, he would miss by the widest margin, like 5.5% or bigger. I've had one miss that big in the 14 quarters I've been doing this, and 15 quarters, 14, something like that. So I thought it was very strange. Well, I questioned his methodology some months back, and he blocked me. And I thought that was very strange. So
Mm.
I posted saying that he blocked me, only to find out that he blocks a lot of people. He blocks Tesla Boomer Mama and Jeff Lutz and a lot of people, because anyone who questions how good his numbers are gets blocked. And that means that anyone
Mm.
looking at his numbers is unaware of his blind spots. What Troy does
Mm.
is uses VIN numbers, and counting VINs is very noisy. And that's what I'd suggested is this is too noisy and unreliable. This quarter, he predicted 423 deliveries, making him the second lowest or the second most inaccurate for deliveries this quarter, second only to Gary Black, who was using 420,000, which was Troy's number from a few days before. So the two lowest numbers were both Troy's numbers. One was just a little
Mm.
more out of date than the other. So when I'm looking for signal, I look at history first. If I'm able to, I look at methodology. I offered to share some of my insights with him, and he declined. There are at When I'm doing numbers, I try to take what I call the Bloomberg approach. Bloomberg
Mm.
terminals cost tens of thousands of dollars. 10,000 a month is the last number I heard. They're very expensive, but they can do things like telling you how much crude oil there is in West Texas. Well, how can you,
Mhm.
on a daily basis, every day they know the number? How? And the answer is those oil tankers have a roof on them that
Uh-huh.
lowers with the level. So once a day, they get a satellite image from overhead and they measure the shadows. And I learned that 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And I thought, that's so clever. I'm going to try and find that signal in the noise everywhere I can. So
Mm.
one quarter, when it was looking like, and this is back when Shanghai was not providing weekly sales figures, but monthly. We had a whole month missing, and everyone said Shanghai is going to be low this month. Therefore, all the production numbers are here. And I said, Shanghai was banging. It's going to be
Mhm.
here. And so I made a number that was the highest one out there by a good margin. And I was closest. I was within 91 cars. And I did that by counting how many of the condenser tower fans were operational throughout the month. And I compared
Wow.
it to other months, and I found that whatever's going on in that factory, it is busy. And of course, I had to compare it to the weather to make sure it wasn't just a seasonal thing where they had to run more to keep the place cool. And that's what got me that accurate. When it comes to news sources, and then I'll conclude there, is that I look for preconceived bias. If you look at a
Mm.
publication like Business Insider, they generally take very negative views on all things Tesla. And it's
Mm.
not just about the money, it's because negative stories on Tesla generate clicks and they're very easy to make. And Tesla doesn't have a PR department, so they're not going to push back and call us the liars that we are. So you look at that, and if that's what they're doing, because General Motors and Ford both spend about $1 billion a year on advertising in the US, but Ford gets substantially better headlines than GM. So it's not just about the advertising money, it's also about the clicks. Negative
Mm.
Tesla stories, guaranteed clicks. So I look at their track record, I look at their built-in biases and determine if they're even worth listening to.
Really insightful and smart and specific suggestions. Thank you so much, Brian. How can people who want to continue hearing from you, following you, stay in touch?
So the name on the channel right there, Future Ozza, that is my handle on X, on YouTube, and I think on Patreon. But I'm not asking you guys for money today, of course not. I publish generally 2 videos a day, sometimes more, as the news is breaking, as I have more travel insights to share, and if you head over there, you might just find Daren on a video or two. So it's a lot of fun.
It's been a joy having you, Brian. If you all found this video useful, please click the like button, hit subscribe to stay updated to more videos on Tesla. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.